On today's episode of Scientific Healing, you're going to hear.
And I didn't realize I had a problem with sugar until I tried to give it up at 14 because I was so depressed, pre diabetic, hypoglycemic, and had suicidal thoughts. And so they put me on a hypoglycemic diet, so taking the sugar out. And I literally felt like a drug addict that was, placed in a facility that had to withdraw.
Hello, everyone. You're listening to Scientific Healing Radio, and I'm your host, Dr. Anastasia Chopelas. I know the power of vibrational healing by combining physics and ancient healing arts to develop my own system that has amplified results with thousands of my clients and healing students. When you are ready to feel energized at the end of the day after working with your coaching or healing clients all day long, and still expanding and growing your practice, go to scientifichealer.com/energize me or connect with me at scientifichealer.com/appointment. Well, today we're going to talk about sugar addiction. It is huge in this country. According to various reports, Americans consume between 150 and 170 pounds of sugar per year. This is like a half a pound a day. This is really, really critical. No wonder we have an obesity epidemic and an illness epidemic. And my next guest has a lot to say about this and how you can kick a habit that is just as powerful as cocaine. Sherry Strong is an award-winning speaker, chef, nutritionist, food philosopher. She was the Victorian Chair of Nutrition in Australia, Melbourne president of Slow Food, and the co-founder of the World Wellness Summit. She has worked with elite athletes, billionaires, celebrities, CEOs, and everyday folks like herself to transform the way they relate to food and their body. Sherry is the founder and creator of the Sweet Freedom Project, which includes a multimedia transformational platform dedicated to helping people get sugar-free naturally for life. Welcome to the show, Sherry. I am so delighted to have you here.
I'm delighted to be here, and I'm really inspired that someone like you is taking on this subject on your show. So thank you.
Oh, you're most welcome. And I know, I have my own little issues with sugar. It is my only vice that's left. I don't take any stimulants in. I never smoked or drank. I don't do any kind of mind altering anything. And I eat really healthy, drink a lot of water, herbal tea, but sometimes I just have to have that little sweet thing. And I'd love to kick the habit. So I can't wait to hear your perspective on things. So I read a little of your story about how you got so sick and tired and how getting off sugar dramatically changed your life. And I'm sure that there are a lot of other people in this very same situation. Could you share what happened in your own words?
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks for the invitation to do that. I was born an addict. So basically from birth, I was fed what I call a lethal recipe of refined sugars, oils, salts, grains, and chemicals, which was really typical in baby formula in the 60s, and it still happens today in baby formula. And what it does is it sets a baby up for addiction. So as a species, the human species, we're an addictive species. You know that, as any doctor can tell you, right? We're an addictive species, and in nature, it was great because that set us up to win. But in the supermarket, our physiology that has given stronger physiological desires for food that you had to work hard for in nature has now got it instantly, right?
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
So I grew up an addict from birth, and I didn't realize I had a problem with sugar until I tried to give it up at 14 because I was so depressed, pre-diabetic, hypoglycemic, and had suicidal thoughts. And so they put me on a hypoglycemic diet, so taking the sugar out. And I literally felt like a drug addict that was, placed in a facility that had to withdraw. And I did it maybe for a few days. I don't even know if I was successful to go a whole day without sugar at that time, but it kind of went to the backside. I kind of had an inkling. I knew that I was addicted to sugar, and it wasn't until I was in my mid-20s and I was a chef in Australia, and I literally had professional license to eat. And I ate, and not only that, I was away from my family. I moved to another country. I was married to someone who liked a lot of freedom. So I was super lonely. I wasn't getting my needs met, and I didn't know how to actually meet my needs. And so one of the ways I figured out was sugar. It became my best friend. And I used to start off the morning with half a liter of Sara Lee ultra chocolate ice cream and didn't stop eating sugar the whole day. Like it literally, while I was eating sugar, I'd be thinking about my next hit, and went to bed with a full sugar belly and woke up with that kind of sugar coma and feeling terrible. And, I reached a threshold where enough was enough. I remember rolling over in bed one time and then my stomach followed. It was like there was two bits of me.
Oh my goodness.
And I just remember going, I was twice my size. I was like, not 10'4", haven't had a massive height reduction. And I thought, this is not the body that I'm meant to be in. I've actually been gifted, blessed, whatever, evolved to have this amazing, amazing body. And this is just not right. So I managed to lose that weight at that time without dieting. I started running. I started, getting physically active. And through my physical activity, it started to heal certain parts of me, and it started a desire to eat better. As you had mentioned in my bio, I became the Victorian chair of Nutrition Australia, and I had a cooking school. And I was doing these low-fat, quick and easy meals for people. And I did that when I was actually twice my size. So I always wondered if my students wondered whether I was eating any of this food or I was just eating all of that food. Yeah, so I broke free from that really deep sugar addiction, the hardcore sugar addiction. And I went on to then, help other people in the food coaching and the speaking and presenting business in Australia. But I had a dirty little secret, I still was eating sugar. So I wasn't freebasing it anymore. Wasn't starting off the morning with ice cream, but it had crept into my life, and I refer to it as just wanting it. I'll just have one glass of wine here, just one cup of coffee with some sugar in it, or just one croissant at the farmer's market, or just one ice cream. And you just want it, throughout the week, and you realize you're actually taking in a lot of sugar. No, it's not half a pound like, the typical person or where I was before, but it creates this dull, low level of, it just takes, and everything but energy. It really suppresses your energy. It pushes your energy down, and I was still using it as a crutch to deal with any kind of discomfort rather than dealing with discomfort. And so I then, I almost lost my mom, and it was definitely in part from complications from her eating patterns, and sugar played a big part of it. And it kind of snapped me into this awareness. And in particular, when she was in the hospital, admitted for liver and kidney failure, and we didn't know whether she was going to live. And there was a woman beside her in the hospital who, if you looked at her, you would have thought she was healthy and a fit woman, around the same age as my mom. And she was actually in the hospital because she broke her leg during a diabetes-induced stroke.
Wow.
And she's in the bed in the hospital, and her family comes in and brings in a tray of 24 donuts and sets it at the end of her bed for her to munch on during her stay, thinking, well, she's got insulin. She doesn't have to worry about it. She's in the hospital. It's not like she's going to fall. And it was just one of those, really, kind of clarifying moments where I just thought, okay, I need to take this on. And I wasn't ready to do it myself, give up sugar, but I knew in the process of doing it, I would get ready.
Yes, exactly. And I know even if I am going through a completely no sugar period, just eating a high sugar fruit like banana can start the cravings from morning till night. And I'm really keenly aware of it. So I tend to not eat a lot of fruit. And if I do, it's what we call low glycemic fruit, like berries. And those don't do it. But if I eat a half a banana, then the rest of the day is like I'm white knuckling it. So I really understand that grip it has on you. And the other thing that's really interesting is that most people, if you put a packet of sugar in their hands, their actual physical strength, they don't even have to eat it, their physical strength will decrease by orders of magnitude, really. My dad, who we tested him 20 years ago, and he could hold his arm out and I could hang on him. I could hang my entire body weight on him and he wouldn't budge. And we put the sugar bowl in his hand and I could push his arm down with one finger. And he's going, wait, let me hold it. And I said, okay, you got it? And then I push it down with one finger, and he goes, wow, that's like really profound.
It
How
is.
much it
Beautiful.
changes your physiology and biochemistry instantly without even eating it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think that's one of the things that's really, humans have lost, and why I value your work is because, we were a mammal. We are a mammal. We like to think that we're beyond mammals, but we're a mammal, and we survived in nature in large part due to our kinesthetic, ability and our relationship with, living plant foods. We knew what was good for us. We knew what wasn't good for us. We knew what we needed to heal. We knew what would make us sick. And when we lived in harmony with that, we were fine. It's as we disconnect and deviate from nature physically and our nature, using all of those tools, we get into trouble.
Yes, exactly. So you mentioned that it's a true addiction, and it can compromise your immune system. I think it only takes 100 grams of sugar, which isn't very much, to completely compromise your immune system. You can get sick really easily. So what is it that's so hard about kicking that sugar habit?
Well, if you look at how sugar's made, it's made. I remember studying when I was a chef in the early 90s, like 91. And I was reading a book on food and cooking, and I saw how sugar was made. And I was like, yeah, I've never made heroin before, but I'm fairly certain these processes are very similar.
They are.
They are processed, right? Yeah, right. So opium sap in its natural state is not addictive or toxic. It has opiates in it, gives you a little buzz, just like a coca leaf. Same thing when you're hiking, just like a cup of coffee gives you a little buzz. But when you refine those and use heat, you're removing the macro micronutrients, including the phytochemicals, till you end up with this pure white substance. You end up with something that's toxic and addictive. The more you process it, the more addictive it is. That's why artificial sweeteners are worse than sugars, because they go through more processing, unnatural processing, chemical restructuring. And half a packet of Splenda can one packet of Splenda can wipe out 50% of your microbiome, in your gut, the healthy biome,
Wow.
So, yeah, so it's really nasty stuff. And then if you do the same thing with cocaine, and then cane sugar, if you've ever had a glass of cane sugar in nature, it's hard to actually finish a glass. And it's because it's chock full of nutrients, right? Particularly when it's unpasteurized or unprocessed. It's just really hard. But when you actually start to remove all the macro micronutrients, you change its chemical structure. So it becomes an addictive, toxic, clear white substance. And we're showing now, the science is showing us that it lights up the brain's dopamine receptors 8 times more than cocaine. And it lights up not just it brighter, but more parts of the brain. So it's a highly addictive substance. And now it's in everything. It's everywhere. It's cheap. It's really hard to avoid. Like beef jerky. Who would have thought that beef jerky would be 33% sugar?
Yeah, I never buy that stuff because I look at the package. I read packages, and almost everything has sugar. So I always say, eat one ingredient foods. It's the safest way to do it.
It is. Yeah. So getting off of it is one thing for the physiological thing, the piece of getting it out of your body. But what most people don't realize, and why most of the sugar programs only work for a short period of time, is because they're just treating the symptom, take away the sugar. But what's happened now is we've developed these neural pathways of habituating ways of being, that when I do this, or I see this person, or I, socially do this, or someone triggers me, I have my go-to sugar thing. When I drive here, I drive along here so I can get this thing. When I have my coffee, I have this many pumps of, you know what I mean? And it's funny because one of the people in my program was saying, she said, I had no idea how my whole life was structured around sugar. And now when I don't have sugar, my social life changes. The time that I'm using changes. I have all this time and I don't even know what to do with it.
Yeah, that's really, really true. I know that I've experienced that with when I changed my diet drastically. I've done it, gradually over the years. And now people go, how can you eat like that? And I go, just get used to it, right? It's just a series of habits. And so you said a really important word is habit.
Mm-hmm.
So most of our lives are run by habits. We have very little discretionary brain power. Like those are the way we transform that discretionary brain power, and everything is run by habits. So digging into the habits, that's really important. So I just wanted to highlight that for people, is that when you're making a change, it's going against the stuff that's already wired into your body, because the subconscious is 99.998% of your mind, and that's where all the habits are running. That's what keeps your heart pumping and changes your biochemistry when you're upset or happy or whatever, even your posture. So that's all run without you knowing it. And it's really important to get into good habits, and it takes at least 90 days. It's not like 21 days. So I'm sure you have a solution for that. So
Yeah.
who is it that seeks you out, and how do you help them?
Well, first of all, the people who tend to come to me have been the people who have done all the diets, and they're realizing, the diet piece is not working. So my background is as a chef and nutritionist, so food's definitely a part of it. But what I've learned, excuse me, itchy nose, what I discovered is that when I worked with people just the food piece, they would have this much success, right? When I started to work with them by bringing in the philosophical, understanding our relationship to nature and the philosophy around food, of developing a healthy relationship with food, our body, and the planet, they had this much success. When I got them into the kitchen cooking, no matter where their stature was in the world. So I've had billionaires who can hire, full-time chefs to cook for them in a class peeling almonds to make almond milk with me. So, but what it does is it changes our relationship. And I bring in philosophies that help people understand that when you make almond milk from scratch, you have a very different relationship with understanding how it nourishes you versus the almond milk you get in the container. It tastes different. It feels different in the body. It takes different resources from the planet. And you can't teach that necessarily just online. So I had that kind of success. But then when I started to move into a concept I call hyper-nourishment, and I started to get people to divide their life into 4 quadrants. That's why I call it hyper, based on the mathematic, beyond 3 dimensions. So we've got the 4 dimensions of our life: mental, emotional, spiritual, and physical. And what I started to notice with people is that if I started to work with them to look at what was toxic within their life, mentally, emotionally, spiritually, and started to remove that or replace those behaviors or thoughts with nourishing versions, that once they actually started to make those changes in the mental, emotional, spiritual, making changes in the physical became so much easier, because you started to address the underlying causes as to what was driving them to have sugar or refined processed foods in the first place. So when you start to do that and working with those behaviors of getting their mindset so they understand the philosophy, that understand how we're actually meant to be relating to food, so they're not walking into a supermarket and being a victim of all the nutritional marketing and all the kind of manipulated science to promote certain products. And you're not a trend or a fad follower. You actually have a knowing to eat with the seasons, seasonally, locally, organically, and whole. And then you start to learn to prepare your food, and you organize your life so that you have nourishing things in all, wherever it is you're traveling, your home, however your life is set up. And you have non-food tools that basically help you when you're triggered. So, and we all get triggered. I had an incident the other day where I get my spring water from the mountain. I drive to the mountain. I drive through the city and up the mountain to go and get my spring water. And for the second time since I've lived in Vancouver, they've capped a spring. This was another spring they've capped. So there's only one left, and it's not a very trustworthy source. And I have a huge attachment to getting my own spring water, like not just because I love the flavor of it. I know it's pure and it's clean and what it does for my body. But I have an ego thing about it. It's like, I love the fact that I go and get my water. And I was excited, and it was all sunny and beautiful. And I get to the spring and I'm in disbelief. I literally went through all the stages of grief, and I spent 2 hours on the way home crying. And it's not just because of the aforementioned things that I have. It's because I believe it's, another universal right that humans should have to access spring water, to be able to gather that for themselves, and it's being taken away from us, and bigger picture things. And it made me grieve a lot. And in the past, I definitely would have made sure I drove home via bakery.
Wow. Mm-hmm.
And because of obviously the work I do and what I'm teaching, and I'm certainly not impenetrable.
Yes, we're all works in progress.
Yeah, but I knew I had some asparagus at home, and this might sound kind of goody two shoes for people, but this is no ordinary asparagus. It was just freshly picked, and it has a very different flavor than when it's being put in cold storage and shipped and everything like that. And I got home and I was emotional eating. I know that. I was hungry too. I ate that asparagus with such emotion and pleasure and nourishment. But had I not had that at home, that thing that, is nourishing for me, but is also a treat for me, I could actually see myself deviating from a bakery, even deviating towards a bakery, even though I teach this stuff. So it's about equipping your life and having the non-food tools. And fortunately, I had a call that I got on a coaching call afterwards, which was another thing that I knew I was going to, and, was really helpful and helped me show up. But when people get all of those pieces in place, it's amazing how it just kind of pushes the sugar out. And when I work with people, we have 4 weeks in our program where I'm not asking you to give up sugar. I have a 7-day Eat Less Sugar challenge during that time. I have lots of awareness tools, but I'm getting your life set up. The program gets your life set up. You do the work. I'm sorry. I just where you're getting set up so that when you actually go to give up sugar, it's not like this huge, scary thing. You actually start to get excited about it and you go, okay, I'm ready.
That's really interesting. So you touched on several points in that. So the first, the spiritual, emotional, mental, and before you hit the physical, this is actually the process of energy healing. So you're healing their spirit, and sugar is the need to make your life sweeter because it's not good right now. So that is a really important point. And the other thing that you said that I really liked was talking about how different something freshly picked tastes. And when I lived in Germany for 13 years, and we lived right in the farmlands. And so we could go, there's something, they grow asparagus underground, so it's white, and you can't eat it the second day. You have to buy it and have it that day. Otherwise, the next day it's bitter. And so we'd go to the farmers, they'd pick it in the morning, and they're only allowed to pick it for 6 weeks. So they pick it in the morning, you go there early in the day, and then you cook it right away. And it's a delicacy, and there's nothing like it. They don't grow it here like that. So I understand entirely. And it's the same way with a lot of fruits and vegetables. And most of the stuff, the reason why you see so few varieties in the store is because they don't hold up. The flavor doesn't hold up. Because I would pick apples straight off the orchard, and I'd take them home and eat them within the first day or two. And if they lasted longer than that, they tasted mealy, dry, boring, all that pizzazz went out. So I encourage everybody to go pick your fruits and your vegetables and go get them fresh and eat them, or grow them in your backyard. So
yeah. And another piece around that fruit piece is that fruit gets most of its nutrients infused into it during the ripening process. So the flavor compounds, aroma compounds, and color compounds, most of it comes in the ripening process. So most of the fruit in supermarkets is picked green. So it's picked before the ripening process. So it's picked before all those nutrients are infused into the fruit, which is why if you've ever had a supermarket apple and you're eating it thinking, I'm doing the right thing, but I'm not enjoying it, that's why. It's because it has a sweetness. They've learned how to create that piece, but the nourishment isn't there. That when you've had a piece of fruit off the tree and it's warmed by the sun. I mean, I've had it and I've been like making the I'll have what she's having noises because it's so.
It absolutely is true.
Yeah.
And we have stuff growing here. My dad has had a garden, most of our lives, and he's still growing one, even though he's turning 87 soon, like in the next month. But he still grows it. We still got tomatoes and apricots and apples and things out in the back, and just to go out in the backyard and pick it and put it in your mouth. You can't buy it.
Yeah.
And so I can tell the energy of a substance. Right. So most fruits and vegetables, when you get them really fresh, have a really high energy. And by the time they've gotten to the store, it's somewhere around 60% of its original energy. And like you said, they are picked green. Like everything is picked green and ripened in the trucks, and they just spray ethylene in it to get it to ripen. And that's not the right way to have food.
Yeah.
And that's why we are nutrient, and that's why we seek out sugar, because our bodies are nutrient depleted.
Yeah.
Right.
We're all seeking to feel better. And for the first part of the sugar hit, we feel better, right? So that's part of it. But I would say most of the people that I've worked with over the last 20 years, when they come to me, are malnourished. And we're talking about, affluent people, celebrities, athletes, people who have access to resources, information, shelves, money, nothing's stopping them. But the way we're eating as a species, our food, just like that lethal recipe I spoke about, how they make baby formula, refined sugars, oils, salts, grains, what happens is it's in everything. There's a combination of it, sometimes all of it in a food, and all the nutrients have been depleted. So the body's saying, feed me more, I'm not getting what I need. And it feels terrible after that food. So we always choose, we more often than not choose a food that gives us a corresponding high to the low that it's created. It's like if you're feeling down here, you're feeling terrible, you're upset, boyfriend's broken up with you, being fired from your job. Most people don't sit in front of the television with a big bowl of carrots or broccoli, right? They choose something that's going to give them a corresponding high to their low, even if they know the crash is going to come.
Interesting. Yeah. Really interesting. So what's a typical result of when someone comes to you and gets help?
Well, I think probably the big thing is that they get a sense of peace that comes from understanding how it is we're meant to be eating. So ending nutritional confusion. And that's a big piece. And that's not just something that they take with them, or take away for 7 days, 30 days, or an 8-week program. It's now a way of actually understanding. So you can't be fooled and manipulated by the next thing that people, eliminate the processed food. So that means that they are going to sleep better, wake up better, feeling more refreshed. They're going to have more even moods throughout the day. They're not going to have that 3 p.m., killer craving kind of moment. That they're not going to be, yelling at people in traffic as much. They're going to be able to. Sorry.
Yeah, so they're really becoming transformed into the healthy human being they were meant to be.
Yes, and their thought processes get clear, so they can make better decisions, and then it just builds on each other.
So that's interesting. That's what happens when I work with people with energy, the same thing. And what happens is, so I get their energy up, and then they start making better choices. So I find that the human body is really interesting. If you stand up straight and smile, you feel better. But when you feel good, you stand up straight and smile anyway. So it doesn't matter which end of the spectrum you work in. It's just what someone needs. So that's really awesome. I love that. And that also that you address those other aspects in their lives. So let's take a little break, and then we'll come back. So I want to remind all of our listeners, you're listening to Scientific Healing with Dr. Anastasia Chopelas, and today my special guest is Sherry Strong, chef, nutritionist, and advocate of real food diets. When we return after the break, we'll dive deeper into a process and show how you can kick this dangerous addiction and why you should. You can actually do simple physical manipulations on yourself to change your mental, emotional state, release blocks, and even release things like pain in your body. And of course, the backup to all of these techniques, the backup is to work out also the spiritual, the emotional, the mental, and then relieve the physical. I have a process that does that. We go through one step at a time and clean up all of, so whatever condition that you have, whether it's mental, emotional, spiritual, or physical, whatever condition that you have, especially if it manifested in the physical, was usually years in the making. You didn't get it overnight, years in the making. One of the ways that I work is I find out when something got manifested in your body, like go back to that year, and then rewrite the story, uncreate the story, redo the story. So it's as if it never happened. It's as if you imagine your life as a tree, and here you are at birth, and each decision that you make will create a different branch, right? So you have all these branches of possibilities, and you're ending up somewhere along the branch. And by doing energy work, it's as if you did not make that decision, and instead you made a different decision, and you end up on another branch. So that's the way I view energy healing with regards to whatever your life is now. And the great thing is that we are infinite beings of light, powerful beings of light, and we can change our history, and we can rewrite things, and we can create whatever life we want. And I'm ready to have a conversation with you if that's what you'd like to have in your life. Either learn it for yourself or to have me help you with it. So I have my contact information is scientifichealer.com/contact or scientifichealer.com/appointment. So you can either write me or have a conversation with me, and I always answer whatever queries come through. And I do it personally because I'm very interested in hearing what you would like to hear. Welcome back. You're listening to Scientific Healing with Dr. Anastasia Chopless. If you are a healer or coach, you can discover more about scientific healing and the deceptively simple processes by going to scientifichealer.com/action and download your action guide for discovering your biggest challenge to success. Before the break, we were talking to Sherry Strong about sugar addiction and why you should be free of it. Let's dive deeper into her process. Welcome back, Sherry. I'm so excited to be talking about this because it's really personal, and I'm sure it's really personal for a lot of other people.
Mm-hmm. Yes, it's great you're addressing it.
Yeah. So before the break, we were talking about that people are addicted to sugar and how and why it's important to cut it out of your life. Let's talk about a really difficult case, somebody that's really resistant to it, and how you solve that for them.
Yeah. So it's interesting. I had one student come to me who, Gina, who was definitely verging on morbidly obese, and she was not just having sugar; she was having like 6 pots of coffee a day. So there was a lot going on for her. And she went through actually a different program that I run to become a food coach, and a 10-month program. And we went on retreat and all of those things. And she had great intentions of what she wanted to do in the world. And when I created the Sweet Freedom program, she knew that sugar was her piece. Mm-hmm. And I always beta test with my own food coaches before I take it out to the public. So I beta tested with them, and she didn't show up for the program. And I thought, well, that's really interesting, because months before she was like, this is the program I need. And then the second program she kind of dipped her toe into, but was a little bit avoidant. And the third time we ran the program, she went in all in. And she was scared, like many people who go through it, and people like myself. There's a point where your addiction's so bad, you really think that sugar's stronger than you, and that it's absolutely impossible to give it up, and that you're just going to die, basically, with the sugar in you. And she just basically followed the steps and showed up each day, that one day at a time thing. She did the work, right? And basically felt that at the end of it, she did the 30-day sugar challenge after the 4 weeks, and it's just an amazing, passionate, glowing testimonial of not only you can do it, even though it feels like it's impossible, and by doing it, your example. So she is a foster mother to children, Aboriginal children here in Canada, and so her latest intake was 5 children.
Wow.
And so now she's modeling this food, and these kids are getting food for the first time. Some of them, unfortunately, had some pretty tragic things going on in their life, and they're just, bringing their mugs up for, more smoothie, and, they're finishing everything in their bowls and licking the plates and stuff like that. So not only is she inspired and changed her own life, but she's now passing it on to children who may never have experienced this kind of nourishment so far in their life.
Yeah, it's really dramatic what a little bit of nourishment will do, especially for children, how their behavior changes, how their drive changes, their willingness to work really hard, to learn, and they just completely transform.
Absolutely. Most children now who are fed, the standard the SAD diet, their brains are malnourished.
Yes, they are. And what's interesting, my grandson goes to a preschool here where they supply the food. And my daughter, we've been on health food since we were the health nuts in the 1960s, the health nuts down the block. So, it goes from generation to generation. And what you were saying about the food prep, I used to always have my kids involved in food prep, and they would cut veggies, and they loved eating the veggies, right? People say, I can't get them to eat it. Just get them involved in the food prep. And they open his lunchbox, all the attendants, and they're all jealous about what she prepares for him. But he is a lean, healthy, vibrant, strong, just does way better than the other kids. And it's really sad that they feed him mac and cheese for lunch, which is just junk food.
Yeah, it is. There's nothing that's going to nourish, energize, or protect their body.
Correct.
Yes.
So I really agree with that. So what's a tip or two? We're going to talk about this 7-day challenge because I downloaded it. And so what's a tip or two that someone could get started in their life?
So it's really tempting to just want to go tomorrow cold turkey and cut it out. And people who do this, there's like 1% of the population that have success long-term when they do that. So the first piece is you have to start to have an awareness before you can change stuff. Because if you're just cutting it out and you haven't done the awareness piece, you're treating a symptom, not cause. So first piece, start to look at how much sugar is in your diet. So that means where it is in all the foods. Start to look at every single label. Ask at the restaurant, oh, is there sugar in this dressing? Things that you wouldn't think it's in. You just start to become aware. Write it down. Not many people are good with food journals. Sometimes I'll get people to put sticky notes on everything in their cupboard that has sugar in it. So every time they're pulling in their fridge, every time they're pulling it out, they start to realize, oh my goodness, that has sugar in it. So that creates a certain level of awareness. So not just how much you're having, but where it's all hiding in everything. But then you want to create this other area of awareness of where am I triggered to have sugar? Because if you just work on this bit and you're not dealing with how do I actually handle when I'm triggered and what do I actually do when I am triggered and have non-food tools to cope with it, it's very likely that you're not going to last in any kind of getting off of sugar. So the awareness piece is the first piece to start to look at. And then the next piece is just start to nourish yourself. Before you give up sugar, just in every single meal, make sure that you have something that's living, green, nourishing, energizing, and protective. So I'm not getting you to change anything and cut anything out first. Just start to bring in the good, bring in the nourishment. Depending on how saturated your body is with processed food, it will depend on when you start to notice it. But most people notice a dramatic shift by nourishing themselves within 7 days. And then once you start to develop this habit of nourishing yourself and it becomes, well, I just have something living, and healthy and nourishing with every meal, then start to work on, okay, where in my life am I toxic? Like, where do I have toxicity? And your triggers are a really good place to actually uncover that information. So whenever I have a conversation with so-and-so, whenever I start to gossip, whenever I watch this television show, whenever I read this graphic, crime novel, I might have some joy and pleasure in the moment, but it's very short-lived. And then I'm left with this hangover of anxiety or fear or not feeling good about ourselves. So start to excavate where you're toxic and start to repattern. I call it the Costanza method.
Well, it's really interesting. I like this whole approach of, preemptively taking care of the problem before it happens.
Yeah.
And so I've been really careful with my food forever. And when I used to fly across the country, I always packed a meal, or
Mm.
fly, I used to live in Europe and I'd fly to here and I'd pack my food. And then I knew exactly where to go shopping to get the food that I needed, at when I was staying in different hotels. So I wouldn't go to the coffee shop, or, have the food there. And so you just preemptively take care of it. You plan ahead, preemptively take care of it, make sure that you're nourished. But now the behaviors, the changing behaviors, like what triggers you. Okay, now what am I going to do when I get triggered? So taking care of it in a non-food way.
Yeah.
So that I really love that approach, because that's something, I hadn't thought of. I just preemptively take care of it, that I'm having my meals. And when I have my meals, then I'm nourished and I don't worry about other stuff.
Yeah.
But taking care of the emotional stuff, that's really, really important. Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So many businesses fail pretty early on. What keeps you going? Like, a lot of people learn something like, oh, sugar's bad, or, like for me, I teach people how to heal themselves, and then they just don't want to do it for other people. They just keep it for themselves and their families. So what is that keeps you going, and why are you still in business after all this time?
Well, I often joke, I say, I don't know for certain if they're past or future lives, but if there is such a thing, I came to this incarnation for the food. So I believe that being starved as a young baby with baby formula, malnourished at the very least, starves probably dramatic, and then having a natural love for food, and wanting to, from a young age, like when I left high school, I studied to become a missionary. So from 11 years of age, I used to cry myself to sleep worrying about the world around me, even though I myself grew up in a very tumultuous, dysfunctional home, and didn't feel safe in that home. So I think I came into the world with a love of food. I came in with a desire to actually want to make the world a better place, and was malnourished to kind of as a training ground to help me do this work, because it's so needed right now. So for me, it's mission driven, and money's not my priority in life. I know I need it, and I like it. I like the freedom that it affords me, but it's always about making a difference and a change. And that evolves how I actually help people. And the more I learn, the better I am equipped to be able to help people. But that's what keeps me going. I just can't do anything else.
Right. So in other words, whatever discomfort you have, the mission is so much bigger than any of that. Right?
Yes. And quite frankly, Anastasia, I'm unemployable. After this long of working for myself, I wouldn't hire me.
You're better off being a boss. So what's your biggest challenge now?
Well, we have the 7-day challenge, which you downloaded, and as it's free. We want to get it out to 1 million people. For a lot of people, the thought of giving up sugar is just too much, and it's inconceivable. But what I do know is if you can have your sugar consumption of what you're having, it's going to increase your energy significantly. So we want to get the Sweet Freedom Eat Less Sugar 7-day challenge out to 1 million people, and that's our biggest challenge this year.
Okay, so everybody, we're going to tell you how to download it in just a minute or two. So you'll know how. And then another question. So what's the biggest lesson that you learned? Like, I love this whole why you're staying in it, because a lot of people, we choose, it's the way we look at it in energy healing, is that you choose your challenge when you're little, because that's what's going to evolve into something bigger. So I somehow chose my challenge, difficult relationships, and then getting sick from all the stress. and doctors had no answers. So I had to learn how to heal in order for me to get well. And I'm going, okay, this is my mission, right? Plus learning all this science and then combining the two. So it's really interesting how we kind of have these little pieces, and then we create this bigger picture in business and create a mission out of it. And it's just fascinating. I've interviewed so many people that I see the same exact thing, that those challenges that we had, we're going, hey, wait, it doesn't have to be this way. So really awesome. So out of all this, what's the biggest lesson that you learned to do over again you'd pass on to someone else just starting out?
Well, there's two parts to it. That I mentioned before, Stephen Pressfield gave me the biggest piece of advice is begin before you're ready. Start before you're ready. Don't wait till you're ready. Mm-hmm. And that's why something like the 7-day challenge is great, because it's not asking you to give up sugar. It's just asking you to get started.
Beautiful.
And the other piece to it, which I can't extricate myself from it, it's an act of love. And when you can start this process from a place of love and not fear of death, not fear of, being fat or whatever it is, but you can start it from a place of love. I love living on the planet. I love living in a fit, vital body. I love to be of value to my world. And I know I'm going to do that if I take care of this vessel I have. So if you come at it from that intention, you will be draw resources, and resources will stay with you to help you on your path.
Yeah. And something else that you said is that what's interesting, we as spirits, when we leave this body, we as spirits, we don't have taste buds, we don't have skin, we don't have ears, we don't have eyes, and we don't, so all of these sensations that we're experiencing right now, this is like, oh man, it's so awesome. So being able, when you were saying, the taste of food, and I think that we as spirits are going, taking a bite of a fresh fruit and all of the complicated flavors that infuse into your mouth. It's a wild experience when you look at it that way. And sugar is just boring in comparison. Well,
in comparison, like the strict version, the unnatural version. I often I think like that with you. Imagine I was, in the spirit world going, oh, I really want to try chocolate. My philosophy is I'd rather live to 100 with chocolate than 120 without chocolate. So I realized,
until you get to 100 and you're going, I could have had 20 more years.
Well, you know what? I'll try it in another form in another life, but I definitely know that's part of my human experience. Some people are race car drivers, some people mountain climb, and they take risks in different ways. I take it with exceptionally good chocolate.
Mm-hmm.
And the other piece too that I know is something that's uniquely human and different to other species, many other species, is the joy and pleasure we get from the social connection in which we're eating. And we now know that social context in which we eat is as powerful as what we're eating. So I often say I'd much rather have a greasy bowl of noodles with people who are kind, positive, loving, and upbuilding than to have the most gourmet, nutritiously prepared meal with people who are angry, depressed, and negative. But the power of combining something that tastes good, that nourishes you, and you have that social connection, like the French have a proverb that says, where love sets the table, food tastes its best. Food truly can become a transformative experience. And then you eat to nourish, you eat for pleasure, and you never or rarely overeat when you're doing it from those places.
Well, when you cook with the intention of love, it's infused into the food, and Absolutely. It tastes different.
Absolutely.
It's really true. Whatever we're feeling and whatever our intention is for whatever we're doing gets infused. Like it's like we radiate out. Our heart radiates out at least 20 feet.
Yeah.
And it radiates. We know this from science, right? So it gets infused into the food and it picks up its frequency and it gets all together. So you're right. Doing it with love is going to taste way better. So think about that when you're cooking your next healthy meal and thinking, I have to eat this healthy food. It'd be better if you ate mac and cheese, if you're happy about, if you're cooking it with love, this is going to be so good. But now we want to turn it around and have people eat real food with that same feeling of love, because you're loving yourself when you eat really good food. And that's really important.
Yeah.
Really. So how can people get a hold of you, and describe your free gift for helping people get started in getting off sugar?
Yeah. So our program is a 7-day challenge. It has video, audio, PDFs. It has a Facebook group that you can link into to ask any questions at any time. And it's free. And you just have to go to Sweet, SWEET, freedom,
Mm-hmm.
.ca. So it's not a .com. I couldn't get the .com. It's the .ca. And
Mm-hmm.
it's right at the top there. If you just want to sign up for it, you literally just have to supply your name and email, and it gets sent to you right away, and you can get started right away.
Right, and it has a lot of information about you too there, so people can find out more about your different exploits and how, and I'm sure a lot of people are interested in losing weight. So
Yes.
you lost a bunch of weight doing it this way, and so have a lot of other people,
Yeah.
right? So your very obese person, she leaned down too.
Yeah.
Awesome.
Yeah.
That's really, really, I'm sure more and more people will be interested in finding out. And I'm sure that, once they know that their immune system gets compromised, that it affects everything, the teeth, the bones, everything gets affected by having too much sugar.
You're right.
And it also, interestingly enough, causes a lot of irritation on the inside of veins. So it causes cholesterol deposition, right? So there's so many other health problems that are generated, not just diabetes, but heart disease. Right.
Well, Dr. Nancy Appleton has shown there's over 146 diseases and conditions that are directly linked to sugar. And so diabetes, we know, heart disease, we know conclusively. In fact, the sugar industry blocked a lot of that research and information that proved it conclusively. And now Alzheimer's is called diabetes type 3, or diabetes of the brain.
Yes, I've heard that.
So
absolutely.
It impacts everything. It creates inflammation, and it strips nutrients from your body. It, and disconnects you from your true source of healing, I believe.
Exactly. Thank you so much. This has been so informative and so awesome. I can't wait for this show to air. And I'm sure that you're going to get a lot of downloads for your Sweet Freedom program, because it's really great. I mean, I've gone through some of them and I'm going, I can do that. Right? And I'm sure everybody else can do that too.
Absolutely.
Okay, so thank you for listening to Scientific Healing, and for our fascinating guest, Sherry Strong. You can connect with her again and download that free 7-day challenge at sweetfreedom.ca. Let's you and I connect. Go to scientifichealer.com/energize me to check out my certification program to help you thrive as a healer or coach while building out your practice. When you're ready to learn more, I invite you into a conversation right now. I've reserved time for you on my calendar at scientifichealer.com/appointment. This is Dr. Anastasia Jopoulos. Until next time.